There we go. Hello, everyone. This is a brand new segment we're starting today with our very special friend Rick Stasi, and we're going to call this the Spinner Rack. Rick Stacy's Life in Comics.
I heard the spinner rack, as a matter of fact, just a moment ago. Did you hear that too?
Uh,
I
no,
think
but
perhaps not. Perhaps not.
perhaps not.
Maybe it's up here
Let's.
because I think a spinner. Oh, there you go. Good deal. I think a spinner rack is the best way for me to categorize going back to the past. I'm talking about some really great,
Mhm.
fun comic stories.
Exactly. Now, let's start the beginning because
Okay.
that's a very good place to
I
start.
like that too. I'm gonna reset my seat here a little bit. I'm a little uncomfortable, but at my age, I've got to be more comfortable.
Oh,
Better?
honestly. Oh, yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
Okay.
So for people who don't know you,
Yes.
introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rick Stasi, and I'm an artist and a writer, and I do some performing. And my main love and motivator into the art arena was comic books, and that started at a very young age when I, as a child of the halcyon days of black and white television, was glued to the TV so I could watch Mickey Mouse Club, which had an artist take a series of circles at a demonstration, turn them into Mickey Mouse, and then Woody Woodpecker, where the creator, Walter Lantz, would grab a series of circles and a pointy thing and create Woody Woodpecker. Now that's all well and good because that's a fun little hobby for a little 3 or 4 year old kid back in those days. But
Hmm.
but to be exposed to the adventures of Superman with George Reeves and watching that day in and day out, it expanded my imagination. It gave me all kinds of great adventures and ideas and a bit of a moral compass too, that I think is so applicable today. I would sit there with a towel shoved in the back of my shirt and hold on to my little kid wooden chair and in my own homemade Superman regalia, watch all those 117 episodes over and over and over again. Now, that might not be too interesting. What might be really interesting is the day after my seventh birthday, and we'll just kill that little email buzz. The day after my seventh birthday, still a little kid, my mom sent me out the driveway and she said, "Get the morning paper. That's your little chore." And I came in and I saw in the rolled up issue of the Kansas City Times, the morning version of the Kansas City Star, a promotional photo of George Reeves. Now, I'd never seen a Superman comic in my life. I don't think I'd seen any comics at that point. Maybe skirted by the Sunday funnies and the newspaper, but I ran the paper inside and I said, "Mom, Superman is in the paper." Popped the string off of it. I thought he's coming to a grocery store opening or some such thing like that. Pop it off there and let's take a look and see what's going on. And she broke the string and she opened it up. And I said, "What does it say? What does it say?" I'm buzzed. I'm still on a sugar high from the day before with birthday cake. And she said, "Oh, honey, Superman killed himself."
Mm.
So I was deflated and diffused, and I uh, 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 my spirit shrunk to that of just nothingness. And I wandered back to my bedroom where I had some old number two pencils. I don't know why they called them number two. I always wanted a number one pencil to be something. And I picked up one of my dad's sketch notepads and I started drawing stick figures. And I never stopped drawing stick figures, one with a cape, because in my heart of hearts, I wasn't going to let this American mythology, this great contributor to what I am,
Mhm.
what I wanted to be, die. I've never stopped doing that. So that's what I am. That's who I am. I've worked in comics since the 70s. I kept a day gig because I like graphic arts and worked in marketing and advertising. I teach comics, cartooning, and sequential storytelling, and I've written a couple of books filled with thoughts,
Mhm.
witticisms, I think anyway, and poetry because everything we do, including this, as you know, is storytelling.
Oh yeah. So so that was. Let's see. You're born in '57. Is that
No,
correct?
no, no, 52.
52. Getting it
Yeah.
mixed up.
I was born on a Sunday, number one. Number two, my mom's birthday. Number three, Father's Day. That's the great trifecta. And my dad told me as a kid, he said, "You're born on those 3 days. Great things are expected from you." And I said, because I was a baby. I didn't understand what he's talking about. Gee, you know. As a matter of fact, you can tell from my little mug here, if you can see this here. Okay, this says, "You may be cool." I got to do this. I got to plug myself.
Yeah.
"You may be cool, but are you George Reeves cool?" I sure don't want to spill this coffee.
Yep.
This is George out washing his car. Not Superman, not Clark Kent. I design for TeePublic, and I do T-shirts and cups and stuff like that. And have you seen the film Hollywoodland?
Haven't seen it.
Ben Affleck plays George Reeves, and he tells the tale of George's career and what may have happened from the standpoint of George's suicide. Many of us believe that there was no suicide. We believe that he was offed. And anyway, having said that, I was out in LA when that came out, like 2005.
Yeah.
And I went to see an unedited, rough cut version in a shopping mall, you know, a little storefront where nobody was. There's a party afterwards, and all of us were like aficionados of films or Ben Affleck or George Reeves. And at the party in Malibu on a rooftop, which is kind of cool for a Kansas City kid, I'm walking through the little buffet line and getting my cheese dip and my celery and my olives and what have you, trying not to spill my scotch and soda. And I hear a woman's voice singing, "Nobody grieves for George Reeves." Nobody. I looked up and I thought, she looks familiar, that blonde lady. And if we rounded the buffet table together, it was Loretta Swit from MASH. Yeah, this is on my website too. And she was a big fan. I guess that's how she got to come to this early screening. And she said, "Did you like the film?" And I said, "Yes," and what have you. And she noticed I had my Superman watch on, which I have something Superman all the time. It's just the way I roll or fly. And she said, "Why are you interested?" And I told her the George Reeves story. And as she walked around the end of the buffet table with her drink in one hand and her dish in the other, she kissed me. And when Hot Lips Houlihan kisses you, she kisses you. It's a kiss, buddy, let me tell you. And I said, "Why did you do that?" And she said, my boy, Gil Kane used to say, my boy, you're still wearing a Superman watch and still drawing, right?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "You're in therapy from all this." So I'm believing that the George Reeves impact stays there to this very day. And in the big picture, that's okay with me.
Yeah. I remember watching the reruns on Nick at Night.
Yeah.
And then I think sometime after that, I think they did George Reeves's murder on Unsolved Mysteries at one point. I mean, that's how I remember seeing about that.
It's a mainstay on YouTube right now, because if you go into George Reeves, everybody has their own detailed account of what they think happened. And that's great. And I know some experts, and I take that with a grain of salt, although I'm led to believe that he was killed. My opinion. And I also received commentary, I'll say, from Noelle Neal, who was Lois Lane. Got her to come to her first Comic-Con in 1980. We became very fast friends. I saw her up till and including the time she died. Well, not the time she died, but beforehand. Noelle would send us Christmas cards because she was a sweet lady every year.
Yeah.
Talked to Jack Larson, to talk to a gentleman who knew Inspector Henderson, Robert Shane. And the thought is that he didn't kill himself. Let's put it that way. A lot of controversy and some maybe even litigious that would come up, I'll stay away from. But
Yeah.
I don't think he did it, and that's just my opinion.
Oh yeah.
And I stake my George Reeves coffee cup on it there. So there you go. Oh, there you go. Looking good.
There you go. All right, now kind of pushing the subject a little bit. Do you remember the first comic book you ever read?
Oh, yes, I do. I remember the first comic book I ever read because it's the first one I ever saw, and I bought it. I was a little kid really suffering this loss in Overland Park, Kansas. You may have heard of Overland Park. It's a teeming big area now. It was rural when we moved there
Mm-hmm.
from the midtown of Kansas City, downtown really, Kansas City. And it was farmer fields and gravel roads and people on horses, quite honestly, back then. My father dropped me off at Red's Barber Shop on Santa Fe and Overland Park, Kansas. And he went off to where he would go off to. And I sat there in the barber chair. He said, "Stay in this barber shop until I come back and get you." And I thought, I'm going to leave because he was late. I walked out of the barber shop, walked into Shalinsky's Rexall drugstore next door.
Mm.
And I saw magazine racks, shelves, stacks of stuff up there. At the bottom, I saw red, yellow, and blue stuff. And I locked eyeballs with what would be my first visualization, first sighting of Superman. And that was Superman Annual #1. And it was 1960, I think. And yeah, because George died in '59. It was a quarter. Oh, I love that. It's nothing. It was just a spinner rack moment. And I had a quarter. And back then they didn't charge tax, so it was a good world we lived in.
Yeah.
And I bought it. And I went back to the barber shop waiting for my dad. He said, "Where were you?" And I thought, "Oh God, I'm in trouble," but it was worth it. So that was my first comic book. That would be one of many. I bought tons and collected and sold and this and that. And downstairs near my art studio, I have a spinner rack with a reprint of that issue, and then other issues that are important to me, be they comics I've been inspired by or I've drawn or my friends have worked on. So really, all the more reason to call this a spinner rack moment. So.
Oh yeah. And so how so you start off with that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Did you become a big collector, or was that just a layer thing?
There was no such thing as big collecting back then at that point
Yeah.
because there was no community that I knew of. Now
Sure.
I had 60, count them, 60 comic books over a period of time. I also, on I think my 10th birthday, one of my dad's friends gave me $1 in a birthday card. Said, "Hey, welcome to your Big Ten. This is great." And I took that $1 and that bought me a year's subscription to Superman comics,
Ah.
published 8 times a year. And they'd send you the comic, and the comic was in a brown paper mailer, and the comic was folded and creased tight in the middle. So if there was any one that didn't want that for potential collectability, tough, too bad, that's what you got. But I put those to one side and I'd accumulate them over many years. They became my art lessons.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Kurt
So
Swan.
so
Let me share Kurt Swan. I drew Superman because he did. I love Shelley Moldoff. We became friends. We worked together many cons side by side, sharing lots of very personal stories. And he is a great mentor to me. But as a little kid, I'd see Shelley Moldoff trying to ape Bob Kane's work on Batman. And I thought, I'm better than that. I can do better than that. So I had some incentive there. Carmine Infantino with the Batman new look. And as this evolved, I moved over to Marvel for a while as a preteen. And I sopped up Kirby and Ditko until I saw Neil Adams, and I lost my mind. I would skip school, take a bus trip downtown to a place called the Dirty Bookstore, where all that pulpy stuff was for the older men on the back, where there were comics up front. And I would buy every comic they had, and I would read Neil's work first.
so as you get older, then what made you decide to get into comics?
I couldn't help it. I couldn't stop. That torch was passed to me because I said so. I thought so. And I can't let that die, nor can I let the characters, the romance of comics, the fact that that is an American art form, go dormant. I have to do it. Matter of fact, I'm teaching it now at the Art Institute because I want this to go on and on. And it is comic books, of course, and storyboarding, but under the umbrella of storytelling. So people know what's gone before. People know where they can take their path now, because there's so many freshmen at Kansas City Art Institute
Mhm.
who are fervent and on fire with desire, young men, young women that want to do comics.
Mhm.
Their characters, somebody else's characters, and boom, 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 they hang around the table at Planet Comic Con.
Yeah.
Then we establish relationships, and they've had their first class Saturday. They'll have 5 more. And because of my affinity and my affection for the genre and these people, I'm going to push them because they need to be pushed
Mhm.
into possible next stages. So you'll see 3, count them 3, at art tables and maker tables in Smallville if you go to Smallville
Oh
Hutchison
yeah.
show this summer.
And of course, I'll be there. You'll be there.
Yes, they'll be there.
Yep. They'll
You
be
may
there.
want to you may want to talk to them.
Oh, sure.
We
And we
could
could
put
have
together a little symposium. That'd be great.
little round table discussion. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I'll buy you lunch. No, well maybe
Ooh.
I will. Who knows? They're so great. They really are.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, um, so let me see where the what was your when let me put it this way. What was your first encounter with someone famous growing up?
Okay, that's a good one. Um,
Score! I win.
yeah, I'm trying to think. Okay, but my first personal encounter with somebody famous.
Mm-hmm.
I got out of high school I was 17 in 1970, and I got on a plane to go to New York to interview at Marvel in D.C. And
Mm-hmm.
I had an appointment with Stan, and he wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. But I got there too naive to be too intimidated, and I've never had a job interview before. I was a paper boy.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I got older, I got a driver's license, and I drove a newspaper truck and delivered papers before school, then after school. And I had a lack of sleep during those days. But I went to Marvel for my first interview, and of course, Stan wasn't there. And the place was not a big, beautiful office. It was kind of a college dorm dump, quite honestly. And my first encounter with a famous person was Roy Thomas, and he was less than amiable to me, to the point that Maurice Severin, who was off to the side, was embarrassed by his behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just Roy back then. You know, we've worked together many times on different projects. And she said, "Oh, honey, come here. Let me look at your artwork too. Oh, this is promising. This is nice." And to date myself, she said, "Here's kind of a consolation prize. Here's this week's stack of Mighty Marvel magazines." And on the top was Conan #1.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, I interviewed at DC with a junior editor and a fantastic artist named Dick Giordano. That cut the mustard for me. He was great. And he and I became fast friends. He even ached my work later in my career. Uh, he even came to my house a couple of times for parties that we had when we lived out in Shawnee. So Roy and Dick, and I ended up working with both of them. And then you move and you segue into 1975, my second convention. I'm working with Stan Lee. That's a great story in itself, too.
Oh, now that makes me want to go slightly off. When was your first convention?
My first convention was in 1975 in April. It was called Fool Con, like April Fool. And I'd never done one of these before. I had no idea what it was. A buddy of mine said, "There's some creative people at Johnson County Community College on the campus,
Mm-hmm.
and they have Fool Con. Why don't you take your markers and some cardstock and just draw and see if you get a crowd there, and then maybe you sell some stuff." And I thought, okay. And my wife was traveling with me then at that point, been married for about a year. And she'd take the requests, and the requests are coming. It's like Batman,
Mm-hmm.
this, that, whatever. Color was $5 for an illustration. Black and white was $3.50, $3.50. And we're getting busy. And I'm drawing and drawing and drawing. I've got a kid hanging around my table all day long watching. I thought, eh. But then again, I had nobody to talk to watch or to help me along the way. And this kid wanted to watch drawing and talk about comics. Interesting, my wife was helping me fill these orders. I said, "Who's next?" And she said, "Okay, Howard the Hulk." And I said, "What?" She said, or the Incredible Duck. I said, which is it? And she said, I don't know. I can't read my writing. And I said, okay, we got to figure out a way to do this better. But I draw and sell these drawings, and I receive instant gratification. And this kid, whose name to this day I remember, he's probably 11, Tiger Roholt, Roholt.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I'm exhausted, and been shoving dollars in my pocket. I thought, this is great. My arm was sore. And an older gentleman comes up to me and he said, thanks for letting Tiger hang out here all day. I said, okay, that's fine. He just is interested. I had no one to talk to. Now we're starting what we'd end up calling a community of fandom.
Mhm.
And he said, Tiger's birthday is next month. What he wanted for his birthday was a comic con. And I thought, okay. And he said, would you like to come as the guest artist to his birthday comic con in Mall of America?
Mhm.
And I said, sure. Can I bring my wife? He said, yeah, we'll put you up overnight. It's a one-day show. You'll be the featured artist. And for one day, we have Stan Lee. And I said, sure. And I was just buzzed and so excited, as was my wife. So that's the first really famous person I met. He couldn't have been any better to me or my wife, Sharon. He was inspiring and uplifting. And when you see Stan, you kind of come up off the ground. And we would have subsequent visits over all those years, professionally and personally, to hold dear in our hearts. If you like, sometime I'll send you a couple of snapshots from that show.
Oh, sure. That'd
Yeah,
be
we'll do it
that'd be
when we're done
awesome.
today. Yeah,
Again, anything you can provide, that'd be great.
yeah.
Now, I want to broach a subject. We This past week we had the passing of Mad Magazine's Al Jaffe. Do you have?
Yeah,
Yeah, was it 103, 102?
102 years old.
Yeah. Do you have any stories about him? Have you ever met him?
No, I never met Al Jaffe. Matter of fact, looking at the Mad Magazine people, well, I had a few drinks with Sergio Aragonés at a
Mhm.
party one time, but I don't remember meeting anybody else from Mad, which is too bad.
Mhm.
Because in 2006, I went back to DC to visit my friends Paul Kupperberg, who's a very, very close friend and co-worker in comics and on some of his projects. And I love the guy like a brother. We all went upstairs after hanging out at DC to Mad's offices, and looked at all the big old lateral drawers and files at art from the 50s and 60s and 70s up to present day from Mad Magazine. And
Mhm.
I wanted so much to meet an Al Jaffe or a Mort Drucker,
Mhm.
who is the most inspiring caricaturist since Hirschfeld.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I heard that he passed, I checked, and do you know he has the Guinness World Record for the longest career as a comics artist? 73 years and 3 months, and that was back in March 30th of 2016.
That's fantastic, because you take a guy that's got a life as well lived and as long as he's lived, and you
Mhm.
look at the creative impact of what he's done, and you think there should be a lot of people really, really inspired by him.
Oh yeah. Now, how about are you looking forward to going to 103,
I'll
102?
be lucky to make it to 4 o'clock today. I think so. Yeah, I just whatever the good Lord gives me the next step. I just know that I'm older now, as we all know,
Mhm.
and I think of two things, two quotes, almost daily. One of which, and I'm serious about this too.
Okay.
George Reeves said, "You don't have to be Superman to do super things." The other one, it was David Cassidy, if you recall him from the Partridge Family. Uh, what was his name? Keith Partridge on the
Yes,
Partridge
Keith
Family.
Partridge.
Yeah, the singer and the performer and all that stuff, who on his deathbed told his daughter, "All the time I've wasted." And that was it. That's his last words. So both of those quotes are very poignant to me. And we've lost two family members in about the last month, which is extremely unfortunate. Natural causes to both. You
Mhm.
don't want that to happen, but when you're facing the future like that, you think, what can I do to live as fully and as righteously as possible today?
All right. And let's go for a random question here from a deck here.
Okay. Okay.
What instantly makes you not like another person?
Bigotry.
Ah,
But bigotry, not in the TV word sense. Bigotry about anything. If they want to put a big umbrella over everything, and selective bigotry, like this is good and this is bad. There's so many people that want to lecture so many other people about where they should be in life, who should be accepted, who shouldn't, and yet at the same time they are hypocritical and two-faced, because if you want to apply the term bigotry to certain timely issues right now, apply it to everything and everybody.
all
Did
right.
that make sense to you?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, good.
Words of wisdom from a wise man.
Can I hear that spinner rack again then? Do you have a spinner rack? Here you go. I love it. Drives you crazy, but I love it.
Well, Rick, I think we should put a pin in this right now.
Okay,
I think this was a good first episode. I think
thank you.
we have very much to talk about in the future. For next time, let's talk about the distinguished competition, DC Comics.
It sounds good to me. That to
All right.
me, that's like family. But then again, it really is all like family. Marvel,
Mhm.
DC, and all of our
Mhm.
community. And that in itself is a major blessing.
All right. All right, everyone. We'll see you later.
Thank you.